Welcome to the Dibley Diary for this week. This week we're going to be thinking about Sundays and worshipping together on a Sundays, gathering the church community together on a Sunday, and what people's lives are like on Sundays now. And Sundays have become increasingly more complicated for people throughout the last maybe 30 years, 40 years. Many years ago, someone I know in a rural setting, his dad used to pay all the estate workers on a Sunday after church. So they would all come to church because they were going to get their wages at the end of that time. But Sundays have changed for people. People have different commitments. A lot of sports take place on Sundays. A lot of children's sport takes place on Sundays. Some children have extra classes on a Sunday, take part in various activities. More and more people are working on Sundays, and one of the things which I've found more recently is more and more grandparents are providing childcare support for their families when parents are working on Sundays. So it's really a difficult and complicated question about Sundays. Now, in the Church of England, we have a legal requirement to provide worship on a Sunday, and that's important that we meet that, however that's met in various parishes and benefices. But there are some really interesting questions. In each local community, is Sunday the best day for people to gather for worship, or is there a better day for the worshipping community to gather together? Now, one of the problems is, of course, is that when you start something which is not on a Sunday, but you have to keep your worship on a Sunday, you end up doubling the work. But actually, what is the best solution for your community to when they should be meeting? Now, quite a few years ago, I suggested to one particular church community that people put going to church on a Sunday in their diary, so that they could actually, if they were putting something else in on a Sunday, they would know that actually that meant that they couldn't go to church on a Sunday morning that week, or on a Sunday that week, and maybe challenge them to think about doing something else about what they might do with their church community that week. I was surprised by the vehemence of response I got from some people on it, saying that it was ridiculous. It was a ridiculous suggestion. But I was just wanting to encourage people to prioritise meeting together for worship and fellowship, even when they couldn't be there on a particular Sunday. Thought for the week this week is based on Luke 13:10-17, where Jesus is teaching in the synagogue on the Sabbath, and he heals someone, and the leaders of the synagogue have a real go at him because he's breaking the Sabbath by healing somebody on the Sabbath. And Jesus fights back and says the Sabbath is for good things, for making things whole, for looking after people on the Sabbath. So you have got this wrong, not me. Of course I cured somebody on the Sabbath. And wholeness and Sabbath are important things. They are inseparable things. This isn't the only time Jesus gets in trouble for stuff that he does on the Sabbath, which is good, wholesome, holy things to be doing on the Sabbath. So, what do we think and feel about Sabbath? What do we think and feel about Sabbath? What does it mean for us to have some sort of Sabbath? Jesus is saying that we should keep a Sabbath in a way which builds things up, which encourages things. And it's quite a personal challenge for people. I struggled to find a Sabbath pattern when I had small children and I was a vicar full time and all the rest of it. And I did some work on it. I went to a conference about it, and one of the one of the things that people said, well, actually, it's really important for you to have a Sabbath because it reminds you that God is in charge and you aren't in charge. When you rest on a Sabbath day, you are remembering that God is in charge and He can run the universe without you. And that is really good for us. That is so good for us as humans to remember that God is in charge and He can run the universe without us. Finding what is a good pattern of Sabbath is really hard. Now, it may be that Sundays is easy for you to have a Sabbath. That actually Sundays are somewhere where you can gather with your church community, you can worship together, you can spend time doing things on a Sabbath day which recreate you. There's that phrase, isn't there, R&R, rest and recreation. Rest and recreation. The rest is important, a kind of putting down the burdens for a while, remembering that God can run the universe without us. And the recreation is about doing things which give us life, which encourage us, which build us up, which are important to us. What is it that we do? How do we find time in our weeks? If we routinely work on a Sunday, or we have things which we are committed to which are burdensome on a Sunday, how do we find our recreation Sabbath? What do we do with that? How do we become intentional about a Sabbath? What does that mean for us? What does that look like for us? It may be that you need to find your Sabbath in slots through the week. One of the things that I did find very useful when I was working on having a weekday to be my Sabbath, that even when I had to look after the children, how did I put down all the parish things for one day, and how did I put into that time things that I knew I would find would help me rest and help me be recreated? How intentionally did we just shut things down? This used to be only the curse of vicars who have their workplace in their home, but now we all do. Now we all have the workplace in our home. How do we provide boundaries so that actually for some time we can rest? It's incredibly godlike for us to rest. We hear in the creation story that God took a day where He rested and appreciated the creation and knew that what was done and what wasn't done, and just let it be for a bit. How do we do that? How do we find that bit of Sabbath in our lives? It's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. It can be really difficult, but it's also really important for us to find time, Sabbath time in our week or in our day. How would that look like for us to do something about that? What would that look like for us? The Dibley moment of the week this week is about something which happened when I was at a church conference. I was surrounded by a lot of really go-getting, important church leaders, and the person speaking about Sabbath said simply this: which of the other 10 commandments would a church leader boast about breaking? Which of the other 10 commandments would a church leader boast about breaking? And that was a very sobering thought for us all. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where you can all find some Sabbath rest and recreation.